I want to ask about the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. This is on page 306 of Volume 1. As a matter of policy, our party opposes Canadian participation in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. We shouldn't be funding development assistance through a Chinese state-controlled development bank. There are many better ways of delivering those resources. In terms of the spending on this, though, I note that it says here the total value of shares is 995.4 million US dollars, so well over $1 billion Canadian, most of which is not paid in, rather is callable. Does this mean that the bank can at any time call for the remaining 80% of that capital, so hundreds of millions of additional dollars, up to $1 billion US? What are the conditions under which those shares could be called? Perhaps, Mr. Sabia, are you the right person for this?
Chair, as you rightly say, the paid-in capital there is only a relatively small fraction of the overall commitment. Sometimes these banks, the multilateral development banks, the manner in which they can call on additional capital that has been pledged varies across some of the banks. And I would want to double check on this one whether or not that is purely callable at the direction of management or of the board of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank before I gave you an answer to that. We can come back to you and give you a specific answer on that one.
Thank you. This so-called development bank is effectively Chinese state-controlled. So the mechanisms by which the Chinese state could, through this development, call, quote unquote, for Canadian capital are a matter of significant concern, I think, to me, probably to other members and to the public. So we do look forward to that follow-up. Just to say that the relative, Mr. Sabia, I'll give you a chance to respond. I'll give you a chance to respond. Your minister is a governor on this bank, which you called relatively small amounts of money, were I think about $160 million US. So that is well under half of the total callable. That's true. But is there, if the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank were to try to call hundreds of millions of dollars in additional capital from Canada, would Canada be obliged to provide that capital at that point, or is there a mechanism by which we could refuse to provide that capital?
I think I just answered that question by saying that we need to check. The rules vary across institutions, and I would just need to check to make sure that I gave you the absolutely correct answer to that question.
Okay, so the follow-up information I'm looking for is one, the mechanism by which this could be called. Two, whether Canada would have the discretion to say no if that mechanism were used to be called by the bank. Is Canada able to pull out of this, or are we able to get our money back if hypothetically a new government came in and didn't want anything to do with this vehicle?
The participation of the Government of Canada in the bank is always subject to the control of the Government of Canada.
Okay, how much money do we get back if we pull out, though?
Thank you very much, Mr. Genuis. I mean, that is the time, unfortunately. I'm going to turn to Ms. Shanahan now. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I'd actually like to give Mr. Leswick the time to respond more fully to Mr. Genuis's question, because I'd like to understand, too, the nature of the infrastructure bank.
So just that very last question that the member opposite did?
Yes, yeah.
You would redeem, if the Government of Canada chose to withdraw their shareholding from the Asian Infrastructure Bank, you would redeem the share value at that moment in time. So whatever the US dollar conversion would be and whatever value the shares would be at that moment of divestment.